Hello, everyone. Welcome to Phosphor's webinar series. I'm Harry, and I'm joined by
Ollie, yes, thanks for having
Thank
me
you for
on.
joining me today. So, for those of you new to Phosphor's webinar series and Phosphor potentially in general, we're a full funnel measurement provider. We analyze $4.5 billion in advertising spend currently, and that's from working with some of the largest enterprise brands in the world. We specialize in full funnel measurement that it has always on daily actionability. And our key focus is helping brands grow their D2C, Amazon, and beyond. And a huge trend that we've seen this year is TikTok Shop's enormous rise to power. And that's why I'm delighted to be joined by Ollie Hudson, who's one of the top experts in this area. So, Ollie, can you just tell us a bit more about what you do, your background, particularly with For You as a leading agency in the field? And yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Firstly, excited to be here talking all things social commerce. Yeah, my background, I'm the co-founder, sorry, get my words out, of Saw Group. We're a group of D2C agencies based in the UK. We're working with over 65 of the UK's leading consumer brands. We had a primary proposition called Saw with us, focused on Meta. Recently, a couple of years ago, we spun off For You as our TikTok focused proposition and became one of the UK's leading independent agencies helping brands capitalize on the channel. Since then, they've launched TikTok Shop, and obviously we've had to pivot to meet what is one of the fastest growing platforms we've seen in e-com over recent years. And yeah, excited to dive into a bit about what's working, how we're approaching things today.
Amazing. And on a personal note, throwing back to the past a little bit, it's fantastic to see after having worked with you on some of the fastest scaling brands on TikTok in its early days, to first of all have seen you capitalize on TikTok Shop as that's become an opportunity, and now to have the opportunity to talk to you about it today. So I thought we'd start being aware that a lot of our listeners, particularly in the UK, because we've seen that the UK is still catching up to the likes of the US. They may not have that depth of understanding on TikTok Shop, how it works, what it is. So I'm just wondering if you could start by giving the lay of the land on just what you're seeing in market, how big and important is TikTok Shop getting?
Yeah, 100%. I guess simply put, sorry, TikTok Shop is a marketplace. It's a closed loop commerce engine within TikTok as a channel. You can think of it in some ways similar to Amazon in terms of how you'll upload a product catalog, optimize product listings, and customers will be able to transact within the ecosystem. I think the difference is that it's also the platform of discovery. So Amazon is very like bottom of funnel demand capture, quite high intent. TikTok is kind of the complete opposite of that. The brands that are really maximizing the impact of the channel on new customer revenue and driving that growth for their business are really harnessing its power to drive a huge volume of net new impressions and awareness and help people discover new brands, specifically in those like younger demographics. So like activating Gen Z audiences that maybe were more difficult to reach on other channels. In terms of what it's made up of, it's made up of the shop itself. It's made up of affiliates, so content creators who make creative on behalf of brands in exchange for commission. The organic profile or content that the brand creates itself, and then maybe uh, boost that through paid ads alongside the affiliate commission. Then I guess the last thing that's really kicked off in 2025, it feels, and is an area that I think is going to probably grow the most in the coming years as a percentage is that whole live shopping ecosystem, which yeah is crazy, a completely different way to interact with brands than what we've seen before.
Amazing. I think you've summed up why it's such a huge opportunity as well. I remember when we were working on our early success stories on TikTok, it was all about TikTok as the channel for discovery. And then quite often they'd go to Meta to then convert. So we'd see the list there, or like branded websites would get a lift. Now it's obviously combining that dual power of the discovery with the ability for users to convert in app. And you've outlined all the various ways to do that. Live shopping, you say, it's a particularly exciting one. I think that should give us the lay of the land. And for anyone wondering what we're going to unpack on this webinar, it's going to be the three themes that we typically spend a lot of time at Foster talking about. It's the three key levers within marketing. So that's your creative, your placement of creative, and then your measurement to understand performance. And typically we see those feeding into advertisers winning at scale. So, Ollie, as the resident expert on this, I'm going to pick your brains on creative. And I'd love to just start with, for brands potentially new to this, what would you say is the creative strategy for TikTok Shop? What is going to find them success?
Yeah, good question. I think functionally, creative on shop is very similar. So the principles of speaking to a specific persona, creating really great hooks with layers of visual, audio, and written text to capture attention, being very clear with like a before and after state, really resonating with people on a deeper level. So going beyond tiredness and how that actually shows up on a psychological level in their day to day. Like those fundamental building blocks of direct response creative are the same, regardless of channel. I think where the platform differs is the person that a lot of the time who's executing on that creative. So for other channels, we may be using the brand may be creating that themselves or working with UGC creators. On TikTok. It's affiliates who I would say often operate on like the cutting edge of content production. They're trying all sorts of tactics to grow their income because they're incentive aligned with brands. And that can bring forth a lot of new ways to think about how you would sell your products and maybe unlock some completely new routes to market for brands. We've definitely seen that. And then we've been able to pull it onto other channels. So yeah, the executor, but also I'd say it's got an element of like, there's more of like an authenticity to TikTok. It's slightly more focused on those younger demographics. I would say those like outlier ads that drive exponential growth for brands are often the ones that are a little bit more like narrative storytelling led as well. But yeah, functionally, the creative execution I don't think is too different. It's more the people behind it and how you get the most out of the channel.
Yeah, and you mentioned authenticity there as the key point of differentiation. How are you approaching operationalizing that, and how does that translate into a creative having great authenticity?
It's a good question. I think affiliates are often great storytellers, and as I said, I think they're quite often they're pushing the boundary of what works on the channel. I find some of the best affiliates are the ones that are very much like in that target audience or and have that like resonance and can really feel that problem because they're able to talk about it in a way that is authentic because they are experiencing the pain point and they've been through that transformation, that before and after story, in a way that those who are just creating to access the financial benefits and the outcome just can't take things to that level of depth. I think that shows up in the quality of execution. But I think what authenticity is different by brand, and I think the key is getting that flywheel and that volume and that feedback loop going, which I think is the key, is a real driver of learning and growth on the channel.
Amazing. And it's really interesting to hear you talk about a world where creators are taking the lead to advocate and develop that authenticity, but in a world that still very much relies on DL fundamentals. I mean, putting two together, one of the biggest problems we see for even performance marketers, and if I were a new creator starting out, I think would be a huge challenge is how do I navigate the data storytelling there? How do I understand in particular what's working well, what isn't working well? So for any brands or creators starting out on this, where would you recommend they look to understand when they've nailed it on creatives? And what are any watch outs that they should have there?
Yeah, I think ultimately it comes down to like we want to be measuring success from a creative perspective on revenue impact. We're moving into, or we've maybe already moved into this landscape of like GMV Max and the paid side of TikTok being a real driver. And key part of a strategy is that paid distribution. And the way we're going to come on to that, like functionally what it means, but ultimately when you upload creative to that ecosystem, TikTok will not spend on assets that it deems incapable of driving like commercial benefit or revenue against the target that you set. I think the target that you set is key. I think a lot of brands come on and they want like 4 ROAS out the door, and then that limits the ability to spend, and that therefore limits the ability to learn. And I think that feedback loop between ad spend, media buy, GMV, and briefing process for creators from a brand perspective is so crucial. The same as it would be on a meta, like the feedback loop between ad account data and creative briefing is a real driver of growth, and that needs to be in sync and improved over time. One of the benefits with TikTok Shop is that creators can see how other creators are doing for a brand. So you'll organically see it that as things start to work, others will jump on the bandwagon. That's that flywheel approach. And I think, yeah, you want to really obsess around that process. How do you brief creators effectively? How do you learn from the data, and how do you improve those briefs for the next cycle of output? I think if you're a creator, or if you're looking a little bit more granularly on like how can I get some like leading indicators on performance, I often think those engagement metrics, comments, saves, etc., are a really can be a leading indicator of performance, but I wouldn't say that's always the case. Same with click-through rate to shop, obviously, is sometimes a leading indicator, not always the case. It's difficult to give like a real precise place to look for that side.
Yeah, and I think I'm excited to discuss more actually the measurement side of this. But you point to a very good fact, which is even in this slightly more complicated world, revenue is still the very simple North Star for the brands, for the creators. And that's even more important, as you say, because there's the flywheel effect that when you start to generate the revenue, people are going to pile on and they want to generate their own business through that. And I think, definitely bang on the money as well with the importance of, especially as you start out, having clear expectations on success, because, like you say, there's the learning curve as you generate the feedback loops. There's also the fact that you're driving impact outside of the TikTok Shop ecosystem. So it's really exciting to unpack that. Now, I think the final thing you've alluded to is that success is going to come from not just like individual creative excellence, but actually from creating an entire engine of creative excellence to drive that success, drive those flywheels. Can you speak to, and maybe this is getting to the secret sauce of For You, but how does For You approach building that creative excellence and operation at scale? Approaching testing ideas quickly, emphasizing volume, the velocity that you need, and all the experimentation that comes with it. How do you operationalize that with your brands?
Yeah, I think it's key for sure. I think if you look at all of the top brands on TikTok Shop, go on Calo Data. If you've not used that tool, the great thing about TikTok Shop is it's very public data. So you can go on there, you can see the volume, you can see the number of affiliates they've worked with, you can see what swim lane that revenue is coming from. All of the brands at the very top of there are working with a huge volume of creators. They're getting thousands of unique pieces of content into their creative engine for TikTok Shop every month. So it's like how do we create that for brands that we work with? The difficult thing alongside that is that I was reading a study from Reacher, which is like an outreach bot platform for TikTok Shop, and they put out some data that said 1.6% of affiliates out of 3.3 million total affiliates produce over $1,000 of GMV. So that to me just sounds like such a constraint. Like most brands are approaching the platform through like a spray and pray mentality, like just jump on, set up the commission structures, send out loads of samples. And you're basically in that environment playing a bit of a luck game, because you're playing an outlier game of hoping to find one of those top creators that produces an asset that then you can learn from. So we've tried to approach it more from like a performance creative mindset and pull in a lot of what we've done on other channels, the fundamentals of how do we create a messaging framework, how do we brief creators better, how do we create a ecosystem of a closed group of creators that we can educate and work with to create more assets, better assets for the brands.
Right.
And yeah, optimize that again, the feedback across that. So yeah, we recruit creators from all different avenues. We've got our own creator group. There's on platform, obviously. I've mentioned the caveats with that. There's other groups like Social Army, Discords, etc., where brands can go and engage and generate and create those creator relationships. But I really think like 2026 is going to be about just that, like relational engagements with these creators, giving more, supporting them with the quality of output they're creating, because that's going to drive more revenue for your brand rather than just going with the volume approach.
And I think going to the bigger picture for you there, one thing I'd like to hone in on it, we discuss with agencies all the time. It's how do you differentiate yourself as an agency in market and what assets can you bring to the table beyond, say, the day-to-day work that you do for clients? I think what you pointed to there is that creative networks have become such an asset for an agency to bring. When brands are questioning, like, what's the value of bringing an agency on board? It's the fact that you've not only got this creative network, but you've actually trained them up in the fundamentals of performance marketing that work so well for you. So yeah,
Yeah.
really impressive. And I think it's why we've seen such great success with some of the brands you work with.
Yeah, and I think brands are also starting to do that themselves. So you're seeing a lot of the big US brands creating a Discord for their brand and then using that as an environment, both for TikTok Shop, but also to drive benefits to other channels like Meta, influencers. Like, I think that community approach is going to be really important into next year as competition increases. It's like I think that mental mindset of like these creators, these creators who are able to drive real commercial value to the brand, like why should they work with you and not someone else? Is something that's really important to think about.
Absolutely. So a clear message there. Build your creative network, and if you're struggling, reach out for help. So
Exactly.
awesome. We'll now move on to the placement question. So I think we've discussed this before and how over time placement has become less important. It used to be that performance marketers could be in ads managers on a by minute basis, moving money around. But obviously that's a little bit different in the world of GMV Max, isn't it? Can you talk us through some of the TikTok products and how they work and just from a paid ads distribution perspective?
Yeah, you've got GMV Max is the TikTok Shop ad product. It sits outside of the TikTok Ads Manager, which is more direct to web focus, and you can still buy media as you would on Facebook. But GMV Max is more of a black box approach to the buying, where TikTok will take assets from in queue to learning to delivery, and that is an automated process. So as affiliates post videos on platform, they'll go into in queue. They'll then go into learning, where TikTok spends a small amount of spend through their assets to decide whether it can drive like commercial value and volume. If it can, it will promote it to delivery and it'll start to spend in that campaign. So yeah, you've got less tools, I guess, from like a tactical media buying perspective across that process. I still think there's best practice. So examples being brands often group all of their products into one campaign on GMV Max, and therefore they don't get enough exposure on those like secondary, tertiary products that maybe they're trying to drive volume through. And some of those products may also have a different target from a financial perspective. So you can improve things there. You can also do things like max delivery, where you'll spend X amount per day no matter what, or you can set a ROAS target. And it's important to really plan out how you're going to approach things there, because early on. You want to spend and learn, and then you obviously then want to get to a point where the channel's creating the commercial outcome you need as a business. But yeah, it is a real black box relative to other media buying channels, that those who have come from like a more tactical media buying background may find a bit scary and intimidating at first, just giving all of the control over.
Yeah, and you raised a really good point around the delivery mechanism having fewer tools at your disposal there. Um, and I think it's at the same time, just because there are fewer tools, the need to understand what those tools are is still, in fact, it's probably even more important. I think you probably heard similar stories. Brands start out on TikTok Shop and say, well, I can't actually get any of my products to deliver ads. You're right to point out they might just be on the wrong setting. They might be on a very strict ROAS target. And so GMV Max won't bid on that product if it's not hitting that target. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's something we really try and spend a lot of time with brands understanding and creating a plan around, is that like commercial model.
Right.
It's setting the right expectations. TikTok Shop isn't in a position where you can start on the platform and do 1 million a month in 30 days. It was like a couple of years ago for the brands that were able to get on there and execute in the right way. So it's about creating a real plan for how we use those tools to generate both revenue but also the feedback and really kickstart that flywheel. I keep saying flywheel because I think it's really important. It's like that compounding impact of creator relationships over time. You need to be really intentional with getting that working.
So it's really good to start out with clear expectations. So you're not expecting to be, 1 million miles per hour on day one. One thing I think anyone who's following for you and you personally on LinkedIn will see is that you have enabled very fast success with a lot of the brands you work with. I mean, they're scaling up to millions of GMV within months. I just wonder if you can speak to what does the process look like for scaling a brand up that quickly?
Yeah, those are outliers, just to call out. But I think God, that's a good question. We break TikTok Shop down into like 3 phases. You've got like that launch phase, which is almost 60, 90 days. You've got like a consolidation or growth phase, and then you've got this phase of scaling at the right profitability target when the platform is fully enabled. You've got an ecosystem approach to shop, organic, lives, and it takes time to get there. I think the first 60 days is how do we get that flywheel going as fast as possible? So how do we engage a high volume of high quality creators? How do we brief them with the right messaging frameworks that enables them to create really strong content? How have we set up an incentive structure with them that gives them enough of an outcome per unit of sale and a clear reward and progression process from a reward perspective to incentivize them to work with you and not someone else. And then it's how do we like generate that feedback through that paid approach. And beyond that how we get from here to like real volume and the right commercial outcome is all about how hard we work that feedback loop, the briefing process, the content strategy, and drive volume and quality over time. Some things make brands easier than others. I think if you're looking at what makes TikTok Shop a no-brainer, there's things like low AOV, so under £50, products that has like a clear before and after, or is very like problem solution orientated, or has like a real wow factor. And then obviously high gross margin profile, because if you've got really strong gross margin, you can start to go quite aggressive on like incentives. So those like outlier brands are doing those things well, but also have those fundamentals that really work for them on the channel.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And I think you speak to a lot of things there, including there are things that make you no-brainer, but then there's also the ability to just do the fundamentals. And we were seeing, for example, like Samsungs of the world launching on TikTok Shop. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
our listeners will be relieved to hear there's not necessarily just a secret sauce you need to apply. It's about doing the fundamentals really, really well. And that's why I think where you've seen some of the outlier success from nailing those operational fundamentals, and then also having a really good fit and seeing success soar.
Yeah, you got like Vans, Ralph Lauren. I saw they jumped on recently. So you've got these real, not blue chip, but like enterprise brands that are
Absolutely.
starting to get on there. And I think you've got the brands coming on, but you've also got like more and more consumers being comfortable to purchase on TikTok Shop, which I think is another thing to consider of why there's a lot more headroom in, especially in the UK and the US into next year on the channel.
Amazing. Well, I think that brings us perfectly on to the final theme, which is no surprise, measurement. So we're very excited to see so many enterprise brands launching on TikTok Shop. And we've talked about some of the different levers that you have on TikTok Shop and how essentially that's made measurement a more important question. Because the number one thing brands say to us is this still going to be profitable as I scale? And I'm wondering if you can just speak to even anecdotally, like the pattern you've seen across clients. You mentioned that you tend to see brands coming in with too strict an ROI target. What are you seeing in terms of TikTok Shop's impact and how brands should be thinking about it?
Yeah, we apply a bit of a ROAS multiplier to TikTok Shop sales because of the halo impact. Again, you've got the data, I've got the anecdotes. So, um, yeah, I guess like we've we've anecdotally seen with a number of our clients, and we're now starting to try and measure this and put more of an incremental CAC on this activity for other channels, but. We've seen brands who have gone viral or activated on Shop and managed to really build that flywheel and build that distribution engine that impact has haloed really effectively into Amazon, D2C, and retail. We've admittedly been not as close to retail as some other agencies, but we work with Trip on Meta and paid media, but I know they work with a different TikTok Shop agency. But from being close to the business, saw the huge impact that their successful activation of the channel had on their retail numbers through January. And there's a really interesting TikTok case study on that doing the round on the online that's worth a read if you're in those retail sectors. But yeah, again, it's the platform for discovery. It doesn't then mean that everybody who discovers on TikTok will go on and buy in Shop. Partly for what I mentioned around like normalization of that behavior, convenience of going and buying on Amazon, for example, but also due to just like that path to purchase not being linear. Um, so yeah, I've definitely seen that impact for our clients and for others, and I think it probably has the largest halo effect of any channel right now. If I'm comparing it to like a Meta, where that's just not is it was maybe harder to measure in some places, but certainly doesn't feel as large for those who are able to really get it working.
Awesome. Well, I apologize for making you go first. I think it's Foster's positioning that we love to be the people
Yeah,
that turn the anecdotes into data. It's that. So, I mean, it's great to hear that you've been going through a lot of the same challenges and processes on the brands we work with. And this is probably where I'll start unveiling some of that data. So when we were encountering very similar stories in market, brands saying to us, we know it's driving sales everywhere. And the biggest brands on growing on Amazon were actually the ones that were scaling TikTok Shop the most over the last year or so. And the story we've gone through this has been a bit of a bumpy ride. So we started out doing the manual shop ads measurement. If you can still remember those.
yeah,
And we had a great case study with a brand called Give Me Cosmetics. So they actually saw a 29% uplift from including the Amazon Halo impact versus without. So that's a huge difference, right? And it goes to show that there's brands who are siloing all of these sales channels. It's probably the number one challenge we see in market right now. You've got your Amazon team, you've got your D2C team, you've got your TikTok Shop team. But if they're all working on separate budgets, you're actually just going to start seeing budget misallocations everywhere and slower growth. And the really cool side of the narrative we've seen is the blended revenue growth. So Give Me Cosmetics saw 29% daily revenue growth. Laura Geller, a huge enterprise brand, saw 10% revenue growth as they used phosphor data to scale GMV Max 50%. So I guess your point just speaks to the incremental growth that we're seeing from leveraging this discovery.
Yeah, I think Amazon is the real benefactor, right, of this activity. Obviously, secondary benefactor of TikTok Shop, because I almost feel there's a ceiling with Amazon unless you can do demand generation somewhere else. So I feel like
Right.
this is the engine that if you compare those two together, like Amazon is usually demand capture. You have to do all of the work outside of it for it to then sweep up below that and allow people another channel to transact with the brand. So yeah, great to hear some data. We've again anecdotally seen the same, and I think that getting that ability to really put a number on for every one order on TikTok Shop, how many extra orders am I getting on Amazon, and how does that change the CAC and ROAS target that I have for the channel? Just fundamentally changes how we approach the media buy, and how fast you can get that flywheel effect. So I think it's really exciting.
No, I should say it all comes down to that critical question of is it time to lower that ROI target? And the answer is typically yes, if we know it's driving Amazon sales. That's the feedback we're getting from these enterprise brands.
Yeah,
And what's interesting there is, I think this is something we've been shouting about all year. Amazon is one of the biggest breaking points in modern measurement. Jeff Bezos is never going to let anyone install a pixel on Amazon, as far as we
yeah,
know. Or maybe I'll have to shave my head if he does. But until that happens, like we found that 42% of the sales on Amazon have actually been driven by paid media. So to go to one of these silo teams and how profitable is TikTok Shop, how much can you scale it? That's a huge breaking point that brands need to be aware of.
yeah. I think it has like non. Those are like the very tangible benefits as well. I think it also has those like non-tangible benefits on the ecosystem, the content production, um, just that being the main one. To be honest, like the amount of learning and insights we generate for Meta, or from a messaging perspective, a content execution perspective, even like a landing page messaging that maybe comes secondary to that from TikTok Shop creators. It's like a democratization of creativity in a way that's very hard to set up in your business. So yeah, loads of benefits.
Amazing. Let's close out by putting all of our topics together. So like the creative, the conversion side of things with the placement and the measurement, sort of us creating this flywheel, as you say, for success. Um, so what would you say, like a brand starting out for the first 30 days, like what are the key top three things they need to focus on for success?
Going to speak to like larger brands that are already present on other channels,
Yeah.
like most of your customers. I think firstly it's that like commercial model, trading model. Like how are we going to execute TikTok Shop given the environment we operate in? So we've got to take into account the 9% platform fee. Got to take into account the fact that it's usually a channel that is built around offers. That doesn't always mean you have to discount, but it means you have to provide high perceived value to customers. Um, so that needs consideration, and we need to incentivize affiliates. So we need to build a product playbook and a commercial model that works for the brand, given that those are things we have to work with. Secondly, it's like how do we take learnings from other channels that can inform how we brief creators? So what's working on Meta? Can we do any research into, like, we do a lot of AI review mining, we do a lot of customer surveys, we look a lot on other channels like Reddit to build a picture of like how are our customers talking and how do we build that into a message that we can then put in front of affiliates to give them a starting point. And it's obsessing around that. How do we recruit affiliates? How do we brief them better? How do we put those into paid and distribute and learn? So I think it's obsessing over that as step one. And then as that flywheel really kicks off, it's like, how do we go from a position of low volume learning to high volume, many creator relationships, improve feedback loops over time. And that is where you'll really start to see that like halo cross channel impact kick in as you get that volume moving on platform.
Awesome. So I'm going to summarize what we said, and I think we've got a few questions for the audience to then wrap up. So we've discussed how the huge opportunity behind TikTok is the combination of it being discovery channel with this conversion focus to it, which means you've got to equip and immerse yourself in all the familiar world of DR fundamentals, but it's in a world where creators take the lead. And so, like for you's approach of having your own creators, the massive community there, and training them up to not only build this engine at scale, but build an excellent engine at scale for growth. The North Star is always going to be revenue for brands. And that's the key part of the placements options available to them. But we've discussed how just as much as there's a flywheel from revenue growing, brands need to have realistic expectations of when they're going to get there, especially with the targets that they put in the app. And that comes down to essentially like the measurement question of like where are you actually driving sales? What numbers are you using? It is great to see you like leading the way before these measurement products available. It's just figuring out solutions for brands, and I'm very excited for Phosphor to bring those hard numbers to back up what you've been saying and delivering for these brands on the top line revenue growth. So yeah, I think been an excellent discussion. Was there anything you wanted to add before we dive into the questions?
No, all good. Let's get on with some questions from some people.
Yeah, amazing. Ooh, this is a really interesting one. Do you have any thoughts on what distinguishes a creator who consistently drives TikTok shop sales and success over time versus the one that just goes viral once? And is there anything that a brand can look for when they're trying to build a roster that, involves more of the former, who's going to create more consistent success?
That's a good question, actually. I think it comes down to like mindset and engagement, and I think that again where it becomes quite relational. Like you want to be working with creators in a way that's like very much like a two-way street, like because that's how you'll both recruit them and retain them because they get more value. They're very, very valuable. Those creators who are able to drive consistent performance and consistently make great assets. Um, so I think those that are really like engaged with you as a business and a brand, obviously that they have that fit to your product, so they've got that resonance with the products that you're selling. But those that are like show it, we'll run creator educations sessions for our brands in their community, and we'll teach creators again about the product and how to sell it. I think those that are very motivated and bought into that process are the ones that are going to deliver the most value for you, and you're going to end up paying the most in return.
Super clear. And it's interesting to hear you talk about the mindset in that way because it's a very similar mindset to the one that yourself and like similar operators nailed TikTok on in the first place, of just having that consistency, building the right information, getting it to the right place, right time. Um, so very good answer. Just very interesting to see again that world of creative-led creativity intersect with performance media excellence. Awesome. I think this next one is probably for me, but you can have a crack at it if you want. What metrics should we be looking at to understand TikTok performance? I'm having difficulty with GMV Max attribution as it's taking credit for every order. Is that something you're encountering with brands?
Yes, actually, I was speaking to our head of performance on this. I've not been too close to that problem, but I'm aware it's a thing. Claiming value for like organic, etc. Um, I wouldn't be able to give a fix right now, but yeah, I've definitely heard that it's a problem, and we're trying to overcome
Interesting.
it.
Yeah, so I can talk through our findings on this. Essentially, Phosphor found that with any sales channel, there's always going to be a baseline of sales that happen anyway. You put an Amazon storefront up, you put a D2C website up
Yeah,
for your direct search, your brand.com sales, you put a TikTok shop storefront up, you're going to have people who discover and buy from you. And that was a pretty clear-cut picture when you had manual TikTok shop ads because you had like your organic activity over here, driving sales there, and then you had some manual shop ads converting. And what GMV Max is doing is it's combining the paid and organic signals to get as much information as it can on who to serve ads to and as much as possible of the best creative to serve at the right time to drive the max revenue. That's well named for that reason. So it's delivering the best performance it possibly can. It's a very innovative ad product in that sense. The challenge we see, as you say, is advertisers wondering, well, hang on, how many sales is GMV Max actually driving when I know I'm going to get a baseline of sales without
Yeah.
it? And that's that GMV Max is currently in the TikTok Ads Manager obscuring that picture. So it's a shameless plug for our beta, which has really helped our clients out with this. But what we found is that when we run our impressions modeling for GMV Max on TikTok Shop sales, we do find there's a baseline of sales that would have happened anyway. And then what we do is we run that impressions modeling again to understand, well, how is it also driving sales, not just on TikTok Shop, but on D2C and on Amazon? And what we're finding there from initial results, very excited to publish these with hard data soon, is significantly higher returns than TikTok Ads
Yeah.
Manager is reporting. The challenge is, of course, like, can you get measurement that you actually trust for how you're driving the sales, and then measurement that you can scale with how you're driving it, sales everywhere? So yeah, interesting problem to solve. I'm glad that it's one that resonates with you, because I think that's going to give a relief to the person who asked that and a few other brands. But help is on the way, everyone.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. You could get that trade off in other channels, don't you, as well? Like it's always that like Amazon organic versus paid cannibalization. I don't think
Yeah,
it's functionally different, but similar problem. Um, I think when just talking about that from like a commercial perspective,
yeah,
I think a lot of my view is that brands who are trading in other areas, and TikTok is a new incremental channel of new customer acquisition. I think they should run it to like the minimum financial outcome they can sustain as a business because of the benefits that it produces elsewhere. Certainly until they can get a really good read on like what that halo effect really looks like, which is what you guys support with.
yeah.
But I think like breaking even, if you're taking those benefits, is like a good outcome because of all of the things we've discussed.
Yeah, so you describe it there as almost a leap of faith, and I think it has been this year. But then the really interesting pattern we see is the brands who have taken it, they've gone through the roof, right? And
Yeah,
like you say, TikTok Shop is very, very public. We can see the top performing brands. We can see some of them have come out of almost nowhere this year to be the top sales in each category. Um,
it's never going to get easier as well. It's always going to get more competitive from
it's
here.
always going to get more competitive. So, like, kudos to the brands that took that leap of faith, and I suppose it's going to be even more important for brands to have confidence going into next year.
Yeah,
Well, I think we'll wrap it up there because those are some juicy questions. But Ollie, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Fantastic to have you on here, and personally very excited because I think we're going to be driving a lot more success together over the next year.
pleasure. Yeah, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks so much.